My name is Mia, age 30, and this is my story of betrayal by my husband and my best friend. My husband Dave, age 35, and I have been married for 5 years and dated for 2 years before marriage. We deliberately waited until we were settled to have children. We own our own home, cars, and have well-paying jobs. I make a lot more money than Dave, and he does not like this too much, but enjoys the benefits. I had also inherited money from my grandparents, the total amount I have not told Dave. I have been saving the money for our future children. As Dave is a big spender, I just didn't tell him. I am a publisher at a well-known fashion magazine, and he sells homeowners insurance. At the time of my story, I was 7.5 months pregnant with identical twins. When I stopped birth control, we got pregnant almost immediately. We were both very happy, or so I thought. My best friend, since middle school, Bella, is not married and plays the field with many men. She likes to say she is not going to be tied down with one man. I loved Bella and trusted her, which was my mistake because I did not realize her true nature. I trusted my husband and would have never suspected anything, except I had updated the security cameras before our babies were born. I had started worrying about needing extra security as my pregnancy advanced. Since I own the building, we live in the penthouse, and I rent out the lower apartments, it was an easy update. Most of the cameras were old and didn't work anyway. Living in New York City, I felt the need for added security. Knowing my husband would object to me spending so much, I just hadn't told him yet. It's okay if he spends lots of money, but he complains if I do, even though it's my earnings I'm spending. After the cameras were installed, I pulled up the app on my phone to check them out. To my surprise, I saw Dave and Bella get off the elevator in our home together, holding hands. I watched them go into our bedroom, undressing, and watched as they had sex on my bed. Well, I didn't really watch as it made me sick, but I did see what they intended to do. When they moved into the living room, without clothes, and started on our couch, I shut it off immediately. I was heartbroken and furious, but took a deep breath as I did not want to upset my babies, and I was in my office. Normally, the first person I would call is Bella, but that was not an option. So, I phoned my attorney and asked for the name of the best divorce lawyer in town. After getting the name, Amy Marquette, which I thought was the greatest name ever for a divorce lawyer, I called for an appointment. She could not see me until the next day, so I finished my workday as usual, not that I got a lot done, and went home. I was still furious, but determined to make them pay for their betrayal. No one was at home when I got there, and as I walked around my bedroom, I knew I could not sleep in that bed tonight. I phoned building maintenance and had the mattress, bedding, and the couch removed and thrown in the garbage. When I was asked about throwing it away, I just told them the thing smelled bad. Since I was pregnant, they just acted like it was a pregnant woman quirk. I went online and ordered a new king-size mattress, bedding, and couch to be delivered as soon as possible. It wasn't long before Dave came home, and guess who showed up with him? Of course, Miss Slut Bella. Dave said, "Look who I found coming off the street. We can have dinner together." I said, "Go ahead and order something in tonight. I don't feel like cooking or eating. I am having a little nausea today." When Dave tried to hug me, I leaned away saying, "Oops, no hugs. Still queasy." Bella looked around and said, "Where's your furniture?" I told them that I had maintenance haul it and the mattress out, because when I got home it smelled like a prostitute with multiple STDs had been in here. The stench was terrible and almost rotten. I guess we must have had smog today that came through the windows or something. The look on Bella's face was priceless, and Dave looked kind of sick to his stomach. I loved it, and kept on talking about the smell, until Bella said she couldn't stay for a meal and needed to leave. After she left, I told Dave I shouldn't have talked like that in front of Bella, since she has had so many sexual partners. I also mentioned that she had to be treated for an STD a couple of times in the last few years, even having to have a hysterectomy, which is the truth. After I told him this, he really did look sick. I had a snack of crackers, cheese, and milk, and went to bed in the smallest guest room that only had a twin bed. When I told him good night, I didn't touch him, as I felt nauseated. Dave had to sleep in the other guest room. The next day I met with, as I call her, Amy the lucky divorce attorney. After I showed her what the security cameras recorded, she asked a few questions. She told me that New York is a non-communal state, and I will not have to share 50-50 with Dave. He keeps what he makes and owns, and I keep mine. I hired her on the spot and asked her to proceed, as I would like to be divorced before the birth of my children, or at least be in the process. She asks me if I am going to kick Dave out now, or wait until he has served notice. When I told her about throwing away the things they had sex on, where I slept last night, and how I explained throwing away the furniture, she laughed. She told me, "Good for you. Just be careful since you are pregnant, and she will call me before she has him served." Now I had been thinking how I could get back at my so-called best friend, Bella. She works as a photographer in a small office, taking photos of children and families. She rents the first floor in a 3-story building, and I think it's time for me to purchase another building. When I got back to my office, I spent a little time editing the security recording by blurring the things I did not want to see, but left enough to know what they were doing to send to Dave's boss and Bella's employees later. I phoned Bella and made an appointment to pick her up for lunch, as I already knew her coworkers and wanted them to see me pregnant. I had not been there in a while, so I wanted to visit and gush about my great marriage and husband. I was feeling a little evil, but when I thought about what they were doing behind my back, I got over it quickly. I went early to her office. I talked with a receptionist for a long time before Bella finished with her photo session. I showed pictures of our nursery, the ultrasound photos, and told her the different names we were thinking of choosing. I told her and the part-time photographer that worked with her how excited my husband was about the birth of our twins and finding out the sex, since they are identical. I watched Bella's facial expressions when she joined us, and she was not happy. I made a big production of telling them Bella and I had been friends since the age of 14 in middle school. There was lots of oohing and ahs over the photos and our friendship for that long. At our lunch, which I had a hard time eating, I kept up the gushing about everything until Bella had to suddenly leave. I was able to enjoy the rest of my lunch after she left. When I watched the security camera later at work, I discovered that Dave and Bella met up at our home again, but had no sex this time. Thank goodness our furniture was not delivered yet. I had phoned Dave earlier to tell him that I had asked our maid to start working more as of today, and not sure what time she was coming. That way, if they met up there, they would not have time to do anything. While I watched, I was shocked to hear Bella tell Dave that once the babies were born, she would volunteer to babysit one day, while I ran errands. She told Dave he could cut my brake lines. Then after I died, they could raise the twins as theirs, as she cannot have children. He was smiling and laughing. I was beyond furious, and immediately phoned my attorney and sent the recording to her computer. Amy said, "Okay, this is bad, and we need to act quickly now for your safety. I will have Dave serve the divorce papers as soon as possible. You call and have a locksmith come change all the locks. I am also going to share this recording with the police, as what they are planning is illegal and murder. We will get a restraining order against both of them. Do you have a relative that could come stay with you? We will hire a driver for security too. I am worried about you, but you should be safe until after the children are born." I told her I would start working on things right away. I wasn't sure if my mom would come stay with me or not. She and my dad do not like Dave and have avoided us since our wedding 5 years ago. On the rare occasions we saw each other, it was very awkward. Since they live in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, they probably would not want to come to New York City. Okay, I will call and explain what is going on because I am worried about my babies. I called my mom, and she answered on the first ring. She started by asking, "Is everything okay?" I was shocked at myself because I burst into tears. I think the stress of finding out my husband and best friend are cheaters and want to murder me caused me to finally break. When I calmed down, after scaring my mom to death, I started at the beginning and explained everything to both of my parents, as my dad got on the phone too. She said, "Don't worry, your dad and I will be there by day after tomorrow. We just have to find someone to take care of our dog and make flight arrangements." I told her, "Please just bring Scooby with you. He is a small 12-pound Maltese mixed rescue puppy, about 4 years old. He would be great company for me, and since I own the building, who could object?" I was so shocked that my parents had not told me, "I told you so," but they didn't and seemed excited to come help me. They asked if I had told my older brother, and when I said no, they said they would wait on me to tell him about Dave and the divorce. That surprised me, because I thought they would jump at the chance to tell Todd and his wife Molly all about my failure. Maybe they really do love me. When Dave came home from work, he told me that he would be leaving town for a few days on business. I asked when he was leaving, and he told me tomorrow afternoon and will be gone for 3 days. I thought to myself, good, I can have the rest of your things packed up. My parents can come get settled. The locks will be changed. And best of all, his boss will receive an email video of him and Bella. Things were falling into place, and I will call my attorney tomorrow with this news. Later in the evening, I received a call from my so-called best friend Bella, telling me she couldn't meet up for our every other week coffee date. She is going out of town for a couple of days for a photo shoot. I told her to have a good trip and be careful that she didn't hook up with any married men. Then I laughed when she told me she doesn't hook up with married men. She isn't that kind of person. Surprisingly, she did not hear my eye roll. The next morning, I phoned my OB office and requested an appointment. They were concerned because I had just been there 2 weeks before and not due to be seen for 2 more weeks. The appointment was made for the next morning. After I reassured them, it was not an emergency, and I just needed to talk with my doctor. I didn't tell the receptionist, but I have a concern about getting an STD from my cheating husband. This is a talk to be held in private. I phoned Amy, my attorney, and gave her an update on Dave and Bella both leaving town. She said, "Don't worry, my private detective is following them, and he reported they left town together." I also reported to my police detective friend, sending him the recording. He is working on the restraining orders for both Dave and Bella. I was hoping it wasn't true, but in my heart, I knew they left together. After finishing some work business, I met with my realtor and personal attorney. We signed the papers, and I was now the owner of the building where Bella had her business. I had them draft a letter telling the tenants that they had a new landlord. We used a business title as the name of the landlord. I had them reduce the rent for the rest of the building, but double the rent for Bella. I know it was mean, but I do not feel any sympathy for her, and I have a plan to help her employees when she goes out of business. I also asked them to check into the building that Bella has her apartment. I might just buy it too. In the afternoon, I drove to Port Washington, New York, where my in-laws live. It is about an hour out of the city in Long Island. They used to live in the Bronx until retirement. I helped them behind the scenes to buy their home. They do not know, but the payments they are making are going into a savings account. I didn't even tell Dave, as I knew he would tell them. They are very proud people and will be upset at first when I tell them. They are the grandparents to my children, and I have always loved and admired them. I am going to tell them everything today because I want them to be in my children's lives, and I don't trust Dave to tell them the truth. When I arrived, they were outside sitting in the shade having tea. After our greetings and them scolding me for not calling first and driving so far by myself, I started at the beginning. After I told them how much I loved them and wanted them to be part of my children and my life, I began my story. I showed them the cleaned-up version of the videos, and they were stunned at what they saw and heard. They were devastated by the video of the plan to kill me. We held each other while we all cried. I told them that Dave and Bella were out of town together now, and I was hoping to have everything in place except final divorce proceeding before they returned. They said they were so ashamed and shocked at what their son is doing. I reassured them that they would still be my family, and I wanted them to see my children as often as they wanted. Dave's mom, Martha, asks if Dave will get to see his children. I told her yes, he will be part of their lives, and my attorney had explained to me what will happen. The thing is that because of the threats to my life and plan to take the children, it will be supervised visitation only. The court will appoint a guardian to be with the children at each visit. I can observe from a distance, but because of the threat, a restraining order will be put in place. After a few minutes of silence, I told them I had a confession to make and handed them the deed to their property and a bank book. They looked at me in confusion as I told them what I had done. They were stunned as they listened to me. I explained to them that I wanted to confess now, as I didn't know how Dave will react to them being in touch with me. I knew it would be okay for contact with the children, but he might object to me. I thanked them for taking the place of my parents for the last 5 years and for loving me. I do not want to be the cause of any problems with them, or their son, or their family. I told them I loved them and always would. I promised to never say a negative word against them, their son, or any of their family to my children. I asked them to please not mention about the deed or savings, as I was afraid it would make for resentment and accusations with their family when the divorce is made known. If okay with them, please just accept as a gift of love and forget where it came from. Enjoy their home, travel, and relax in retirement. After a few more tears and hugs, I left to go home and meet the locksmith. Then it would be time to pack up my husband's belongings. I will confess I did cry as I packed his things. I wanted to take them to the dumpster, or even set them on fire, but I didn't, mainly out of respect for his parents. I carefully folded everything and wrapped any breakable items carefully. I then called building maintenance to take everything to the storage area on first floor. I made up my new bed, as it had just been delivered when I finished packing. I called building security, having them come up, and told them that Dave was not to be allowed in my apartment per court order. Also, requested that Bella not be allowed up anymore. They were understanding when I requested extra security be available until further notice. I had a snack, then lay down on my new bed and cried for a while until I went to sleep. I went to my OB appointment when morning came and cried again when I asked her to please check me for any STDs. She was very reassuring and reminded me my initial testing at beginning of pregnancy was all negative, but she was happy to order them again. She made me an appointment with a counselor in her office whose specialty is pregnant women. She wanted me to discuss everything that was happening, as now was definitely a bad time for me to be extra stressed. After blood was drawn and specimens were taken, I went and talked with the counselor. She was horrified with what I was going through at this stage of pregnancy. She taught me some mediation exercises and breathing techniques to try when things got overwhelming. She was such a calm, soothing person that I made another appointment for 2 days later. Now I just had to wait. The next morning my parents arrived, earlier than I was expecting, but I was so happy to see them. After hugs and some more tears, I sat down on my new couch. Their dog jumped up beside me, then leaned up and licked the tears off my face. He sat as close as he could in my lap, and when a baby kicked him, he licked my stomach. He was so cute and had me laughing. Our maid, Sally, was with me this morning. Usually she only came in twice a week, but I had asked her to come in more often. She was pleased to be able to work more. She was going to come in 4 mornings a week now, and help until the babies come, then maybe more often. She brought us all hot tea and coffee, then left to do some laundry. My parents wanted me to go over everything again, even though I had explained over the phone. When I showed them the cleaned-up version of the first recording, my dad was so mad we had to calm him down. Then both my parents were furious when they heard and saw the recording about trying to kill me. My mom said, "What is wrong with Bella? We practically raised her, and we even paid for her college. Why would she do this to you?" I told my parents I did not know, that I had always thought I was good to her and treated her like my sister. I had even tried to think of any reason she would do this, and I could not think of anything. I have a great attorney that is gathering all the evidence and helping me. I told them Dave and Bella were due back from their trip tomorrow and would be served at the airport. Divorce papers for Dave and a subpoena for Bella. My attorney recommends suing Bella for alienation of affection, and the police are investigating charging both for premeditation and conspiracy for planning to kill me. Bella will have to show up for court when our divorce is finalized. The locks have been changed and all of Dave's belongings are packed and moved to storage on first floor. He has no reason to come here, and security knows to keep he and Bella out. I told them about going to see Dave's parents and what I had done about their home. Both of my parents were teary-eyed as they told me they were proud of me for doing that for Dave's parents. Later that evening, I received a call from Bella. I answered out of curiosity. She had opened her emails and received a notice that her landlord had changed. She was shocked that her rent had doubled, and she wanted to borrow money from me. She had done this numerous times in the past, and I had always agreed. This time I told her I didn't have any extra money now, as I had opened a trust account for my babies. She tried begging me, even saying I know Dave wouldn't care if you helped me out for a couple of months. I held firm and she hung up mad at me, but I didn't care if she lost everything. She and Dave had used me for the last time. The next day Dave and Bella were walking through the airport, holding hands after their trip to Las Vegas. They were laughing about the fact that I would never know about them and how smart they have been. A man walked up to them and said, "Dave Martin and Bella Jones?" They looked at each other first before replying yes. The man handed them envelopes and said, "You have been served. Have a good day." He then turned and walked away. They both opened the envelopes and saw that Dave had been served with divorce papers, and Bella had been subpoenaed as a witness for adultery. Dave immediately pulled out his phone to call me. When I answered, he asked me what is going on. Why have you filed for divorce? I told him to look straight ahead. He looked and saw me and Dad standing right in front of he and Bella. I had my camera out recording. Bella ran over and tried to hug me and Dad, saying I just ran into Dave here at the airport. "Are you here to meet Dave?" My dad stepped forward and wouldn't let Dave or Bella near either himself or me. Dave said, "Mia, what is going on now?" About that time, 2 deputy sheriff officers walked up and called Dave and Bella's names. They were placed in handcuffs and arrested for criminal conspiracy and premeditation of murder. Dave looked at me saying, "This is not over. I don't know what is wrong with you, but you will regret doing this to me." Bella just looked angrily at me and said, "I want an attorney." They were taken to the police station, and I and Dad went home. My attorney, Amy, was at the police station when the cheating couple were brought to jail. She had filed all the papers and given copies of the recordings to the detectives in charge. Bella and Dave were taken into different interrogation rooms to be questioned. Dave tried to say he didn't know what was going on, that maybe his wife, who is pregnant, is going crazy. He kept denying having an affair or threatening to kill his wife. Bella didn't say a word until her attorney got there. When he did, she denied everything also. After the detective showed Dave, Bella, and her attorney the threatening recording, they both said they were just joking. Dave said, "I would never leave my wife. We are having twins soon." They stayed in jail overnight until they went before a judge the next morning. They pleaded not guilty and were each bonded out with a $500,000 bond. A restraining order was in place to not go anywhere near me. Dave and Bella were furious, especially when they found out they were on all the local news stations and in the newspapers. They could not figure out how I had found out and how I got recordings of them. They went their separate ways, as their attorneys advised them to keep a distance between them until the court date. Dave went to the apartment building but was not allowed inside. Security officers brought him his suitcases and boxes of belongings. The only place he could go stay was his parents' home. First, he went to his office and noticed that none of his fellow employees were speaking to him. He went to his boss, and his boss informed him that he was fired because no one felt safe to work with him again. He left then to go to his parents'. Bella went to work, where she found the office locked and her receptionist and part-time photographer were not there. When she called them, they told her that they both had quit and had found jobs elsewhere. They didn't tell her that I had found them both wonderful jobs with a famous photographer for a lot more money, and they had started immediately. Bella discovered that her receptionist had sent the videos to all her clients, and all appointments had been canceled. No families wanted a mistress who plotted murder to take pictures of their families. When she tried to phone Dave, he refused to answer her calls. When he arrived at his parents' home, he was surprised to see his brother and sister's cars in the drive. He walked in, and his sister walked over and slapped his face. His parents and brother just looked at him without speaking. He said, "What's wrong with you? Why did you slap me?" His sister said, "You've been sleeping with that slut and planning to murder your wife. What's wrong with you?" Everyone knows Bella has slept with hundreds of guys and has been treated for STDs, and you went there. His parents were shocked to hear about Bella and the STDs, saying to Dave, "Do you know you have ruined your life?" Dave tried to tell them it was all false and blame everything on me, but his family wouldn't have it, telling him they are ashamed of his actions. He asks if he could stay there for a while because he has lost his job and I won't let him into his apartment. He knew it would be short-term, as he believed that I will get over this craziness soon and he can go back home. They told him he could stay, but it won't be short-term as I will never forgive him. His older brother just shook his head in disgust and left. His dad took him aside and said, "You do know that Mia does not have to give you anything of hers, as New York is not a 50-50 communal state. So, whatever is hers, and whatever you went into the marriage with is all you get. So don't say your apartment, as we know Mia paid for everything." Dave was shocked, as he had bragged to Bella that he would get at least half of everything if he ever divorced, and that included however much I had got in inheritance. Even though he never could get me to tell him the exact amount, as I planned to put most of it in a trust for my children. I never told Bella either. The only ones that knew the amount of her inheritance were her parents. I always told him he would try to spend it if he knew. I was very happy to get a call from my OB the next day, telling me that all tests were negative and I had no STDs. I do not know how long the cheaters have been together, but maybe at least Dave wore a condom at the beginning. I am so far into my pregnancy that thankfully me and Dave have not been sexually active lately. Dave and Bella were to appear in court the week of the beginning of my 8th month of pregnancy. I too had been summoned to testify by the prosecution. Myself, my parents, Dave's parents, and his brother and sister all sat together in the courtroom. Bella's mother and younger brother sat across from us. They had both greeted me and my parents with hugs. The judge called the proceedings to order, and the prosecution started his summary. He stated all the facts, including that there were recordings. The two defending attorneys both repeated the same things, that their clients did not know what this procedure was even about, and they felt like the pregnant wife was blowing things out of proportion. I was the first witness called. I answered why I had updated the security cameras. And did I suspect that my husband was cheating? I replied as accurately as I could, and that I was stunned and heartbroken that my husband was cheating. When the defense objected, the prosecution showed the full video without any blurring of Dave and Bella having sex. At this point, there was no doubt that there was cheating going on according to the video. When the defense attorney for Bella started asking questions, he was very rude and said that I had always been jealous of Bella's free lifestyle and that the babies were not even Dave's. The whole courtroom erupted at that, and even Dave stood up saying that's not true. When the judge finally got order in the courtroom, I looked over at Bella saying, "I have never been jealous of her lifestyle. I was a virgin when we married and have only ever slept with one person, my husband. In fact, her lifestyle always made me sick, and I thought my husband felt the same way, but obviously not." The defense attorney said no more questions, and Dave's attorney was afraid to ask anything as everyone could tell I was telling the truth. The prosecution showed the video of Dave and Bella discussing cutting the brake lines and killing me, then he rests his case. When the defense presented their case, Bella took the stand first and she showed off. She was wearing a micro-mini skirt and no underwear. She crossed her legs and the whole room was disgusted. As her attorney asked questions, she kept saying she was innocent, that she would never do anything like that to her friend of over 15 years, and I was just crazy. When the prosecution started asking questions, She still acted like she was so innocent. I had warned him that she liked to brag, so he asks her if she was jealous of me because she was a virgin, then married, and now pregnant? Bella laughs, saying, "Why should I be jealous of that old stick in the mud? I've slept with hundreds of guys, and I know how to treat a man." She didn't know how to please Dave, but I did. He couldn't get enough of me, and I was hoping he would take HIV back to her and ruin her life. The whole courtroom gasped when she said that, and the attorney asked her if she is HIV positive, and she laughed again. Her attorney was frantically trying to get her attention and objecting when the judge said, No, I want her to answer the question. Are you HIV positive?" She looked scared but said, "Yes, I am." The judge said, "Did you have protected sex with Mr. Martin?" She replied, "We did at the beginning, but not lately." Judge asking, "Did you tell Mr. Martin that you are HIV positive?" Bella replied very quietly, "No." Dave looked positively sick, and his family just hung their heads. I was quietly crying with my parents, one on each side of me holding my hand. The defense rested their case at that point with Dave not even taking the stand. He sat beside his attorney with his head down. The judge closed court for today and requested the defendants return the next day at 9 a.m. for sentencing. As I and my parents left the courtroom, Dave's parents and his siblings hugged me and wished me well. I whispered to his mom that I would call them when I started labor, so they could come meet their grandchildren. Dave called my name but could not get close as law enforcement blocked him because of the restraining order. Bella ran up and grabbed Dave's arm, but he brushed her off, saying, "Stay away from me." The next morning, everyone was back in the courtroom. Dave's parents had driven him into town. They were afraid he would be going to jail and did not want an extra car in town. My parents rode over with my driver. The judge called court into session. She had the defendant stand and begin the sentencing. First, she spoke to Dave and explained that since reviewing the recordings again, he was not the one planning to hurt his wife. He had just nodded and agreed. Because of his poor judgment of becoming involved with Miss Jones, he will be sentenced to 2 years of probation. She strongly advised that he have a medical follow-up immediately, as he has been exposed to the HIV virus. She also advised him that a permanent restraining order will be put in place to stay away from Mrs. Martin. He can have supervised only visitation with his children, as will be agreed on during the divorce proceedings. The judge told him he may be seated. The judge turned to Bella and told her that she will be sentenced to 3 years in prison starting immediately for trying to plan a murder and steal Mrs. Martin's children. Also, for knowingly exposing Mr. Martin and others to known STDs. You will provide a list of the men that you have had sexual contact with to the health department. You will undergo a complete physical and psychological exam and be tested for STDs. Bella started yelling, "Why do I have to go to jail? And he doesn't, it's not fair. He wanted to get rid of his wife as much as I did, it's just not fair." The judge had Bella physically removed from the courtroom and after calling for order, spoke directly to me. I was crying quietly. She told me that she was so sorry that I had to go through all of this and hopes that I have a safe delivery of healthy twins. I left with my family after speaking to Dave's parents and siblings. There was lots of tears and hugs. I again promised to call when my labor starts. Bella's mother and brother both spoke with me and told her they were so sorry for what Bella had done to break up my family. I tearfully told them that I hope Bella gets help, but I would never be her friend again. The next couple of weeks are rough for me. I was so sad and heartbroken. My brother Todd and his wife Molly came to visit. They hugged me and never once even mentioned Dave to me. I did overhear Todd and our dad talking one morning how if they ever ran into Dave, he would get a beating. At 8½ months pregnant, my water broke. My parents and my driver took me to the hospital. On the way, I had my mom phone Dave's parents to let them know that I was in labor. I was so sad that the father of my children was not with me, but glad he wasn't there pretending to be faithful. My mom and sister-in-law were my birth coaches. Molly whispered to me that in 6 months she could be her birth coach with Todd. I was excited to hear that I was going to have a niece or nephew to grow up with my children. After several hours, I gave birth to beautiful baby girls on February 22nd, 2022. My mom cried and said they looked just like I did at birth. They weighed 6 ounces each and were 18 inches long. They were born 3 minutes apart. They were adorable with light-colored hair. I named my babies Everly Rose and Elena Rose. I named my girls after myself as my middle name is Rose. The whole family were thrilled. Dave's parents and brother and sister and their families came to the hospital. They all hugged me and held the babies. Everyone said they looked just like me. Dave's parole officer allowed Dave to go to the hospital with officers escorting him. He was only allowed to see the babies through the nursery windows. His parents stood with him as he cried. He knew he had messed up his life because he couldn't keep his pants zipped. Now he is divorced, jobless, homeless except for his parents, and HIV positive. He is now on medication, so that maybe in 8 to 10 years he won't develop AIDS. Dave wrote a letter to me apologizing for everything he had done and telling me how beautiful our girls are. He tried to tell me that he still loved me and hoped I would forgive him and get back together with him. I cried when I received the letter, but knew there was no going back. I felt like Dave and Bella were just using me all these years. Bella had never been her friend, and that hurt almost more than the betrayal of my husband. I love my time at home with my children, so I began working from home editing for her magazine. When my babies were 6 weeks old, my parents went home. Dave's parents visited often and were upset that Dave had only visited with his children once other than the hospital. He had decided it was too much trouble visiting at the Child Protection Center, so he refused to go. The divorce was finalized with Dave getting nothing from me, even though he pitched a fit in the courtroom and had to spend the night in jail. The divorce judge told him that since he was the one in the wrong, he had no right to act up in his courtroom. I and my attorney Amy became friends, and she visited often. In fact, I and Bella's receptionist and part-time photographer kept in touch with me and my little family. When my beautiful girls, that looked just like me, were 5 years old, my parents introduced me to a wonderful man in their hometown. It took a year before I began to trust him, as I had trust issues after Dave. About 3 years from meeting, we were married in a beautiful ceremony on the beach. Elena and Everly loved Eric and called him Dad right away. Dave's family came to Maine for the wedding. Dave had moved across country to California years before and remarried. He now had 2 stepchildren and was still just HIV positive. He did not want to see his girls, but I had taken the girls to my counselor, and they were doing okay without Dave. They had lots of love from their grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Now they had a new dad. I and Eric had 2 children, a boy and a girl that Elena and Everly loved dearly. They insisted that we name their sister Emma Rose and their brother Ethan Ross. Eric had adopted the girls at their insistence, and now they all had the same last name, Anderson. I and my girls had moved to Maine after the wedding, and they were all very happy. Bella phoned me after getting out of prison, and even though the restraining order is still in place, I answered the phone. I was curious to see what Bella would say to me. Bella wanted money from me, as she said it was my fault that she was in so much trouble and went to prison. I just listened in shock at Bella's entitled attitude. I hung up when Bella said, "You owe me." Bella tried to sue me, but the attorney she went to laughed and told her she did not have any sort of case. He said if she pursued this line of thinking, she could wind up back in jail. Bella did not have any friends, and last that was known of her, she was working in a bar. She had slept with over 100 men in a 6-month period. The HIV-positive results became known after the health department phoned all the men she knew the names of, and since she couldn't remember a lot of their names, her information had to be published to find all the men she had exposed. She had no more dates after that. It does not pay to cheat, because karma always finds you.